A happy New Year's Eve to you all. Well, New Year's Eve. And to finish what has been, well, some kind of year, we take a trip to one of my favourite cities in the land, and one I sure hope to see once again very, very soon. That, of course, being the wonderful Bristol. Many great nights have been had in old Briz, and I sure hope there's many more to come. And I sure can't wait to get me filled with some of that small bar fried chicken. And today we feature a brewery that credits that very same bar as its spiritual birthplace. That, of course, being Left-Handed Giant. And what makes Left-Handed quite so unique is they're an employee-owned brewery. So a real community effort. A brewery which we all doing our bit to help support. And for our very last brew of 21, we have a cacao and coconut export stout. Now, I won't lie, I picked up this little beaut purely for the fantastic can art alone. Had I taken a little closer look and realised it was a coconut beer, I might have reached for something else, as coconut in beer doesn't really float my boat. But here we are, and I shall endeavour to remain as impartial as I possibly can. But look at the art on this beaut. And I have to admit, Left-Handed Giant are another with a constant stream of fantastic artwork. And I guess that's no real surprise, considering the artistic spirit that Bristol's known for. But even by their usual fantastic standard, this can is a right peach, and no doubt inspired by our years of lockdowns and isolations. And as for the brew itself, well, they've described it as a classic export stout with a decadent twist. We've mashed in cacao powder and desiccated coconuts to the grist, cacao nibs, toasted coconut flakes, then dry hopped with complimentary coconutty sibling hop, everyone's favourite, the Sabro. And the Sabro's little sister, the HBC 742. Well, I guess we know what the favourite child is in that household. But that HBC should complement and add to those coconutty vibes, while also adding some oaky notes, even barrel-aged like qualities, so a very good stouty hop. And they finish with layers upon layers of coconut and chocolate to make for a real roasty, toasty fruit cake with a robust, silky body. Well, I must say, they sure do one hell of a job of talking up a beer. But let's see if they can carry it through. Let's get pouring. Oh, look at that. So it is very chocolatey on the nose, and it almost has a bready or biscuity sponginess to it. And yeah, you're picking up some of them roasted notes too. So it is very chocolatey up top. It's quite powdery, that chocolate though. And then it develops into these tropical notes with dried fruit in there, before fading into a really bready finish. And there is some spice and a little warmth to add to that finish too. It's definitely got that, dare I say, Caribbean chocolate cake vibe. But there are no sirens to be found tonight. And that coconut, it is constant, but it's quite subtle too, which is just fine by me. And I don't know if this is a hangover from the previous beer, but there is a little ginger in that tail. And to look at, the beer's a real treat too. It's completely jet black. It's got a beautiful foamy cappuccino-like head. And speaking of cappuccino, it finishes with a real coffee bitterness in the tail. And that bitterness, it lingers long in the mouth. And that body, it is silky smooth. It's got a real nice weight to it, and for a 7%er, it's as good as you're likely to find anywhere. And now we're down into the beer a little bit. It's those fruity notes that are starting to push their way into the tops. And a big wave of coffee is riding behind and taking you home with a real bitterness. And that coconut, it has remained constant and consistent, and thankfully for me, very subtly blended into the background. It's now almost like having a coffee with a little touch of coconut milk. You're definitely getting a sense that it's there, but that coffee is definitely muscling it out of the picture. And if it was more of a Caribbean chocolate cake before, it's very much becoming an espresso now. And it's down here where the beer is starting to tame ever so slightly. Those fruity and coffee notes, they're still there, they've just been reeled in some. And that's allowed for that chocolate and some of that coconut to take a bit more of a hold up top. So that powdery cacao is the first thing that really grabs your attention. It then fades seamlessly into these subtle tropical notes and dried fruit, before dying away with a real biscuity finish with a little warming spice to it. Really was giving off that Caribbean chocolate cake vibe. But as things develop, those fruity notes start to dominate much more, and it's coffee that starts to control that tail, adding a real weighty and lingering bitterness as it goes. So I'd best describe it almost as a tale of two beers, although I would have preferred that Caribbean chocolate cake to linger just a little bit longer. Although some of those chocolate and coconutty vibes do make a bit of a reappearance towards the bottom end of the glass, it is that coffee that remains ever present to the death, if only a little less punchy. But speaking of that coconut, thankfully it was very subtly blended into the mix. And although it probably is the one constant throughout, it still remains largely hidden away in the shadows. And for me, that works out more than fine. And what would a good stout be without a good body to follow? And that body, it was smooth, it was silky, and it carried as good a weight as you're likely to find on a 7%er. But for me, as enjoyable as this beer was, it never quite blew me away. It was super solid, and I am struggling to really find fault anywhere. But at the same time, it didn't leave me feeling excited to try it again. And so, from us good folk at Hopaganda, do have yourselves a very happy new year.